for questions from everybody. But imagine if today was the day that you were going to space. If you woke up this morning and realized that by nightfall, you were going to be orbiting the world at 8 kilometers a second, with luck. So it makes it a really special day of your life. You think about it differently. You try and deny to yourself that this is actually going on, because there's still so many things that have to happen before the engines shut off when you're weightless in space. But it's still a great big day in your life. The 3 times that I did that, I was twice in Florida and once in Baikonur, Kazakhstan. But the days are largely the same. You wake up, you go to the bathroom really thoroughly, kind of an understatement, and you start getting suited up to go to space. You wear lots of protective clothing, but it even has special significance, the clothing you're putting on. You're putting on your t-shirt going, man, when I take this t-shirt off, I'm going to be in space. I've been dreaming about that since I was 9 years old. And today is the best shot of all the days of my life so far that this might actually happen. You get yourself dressed, and early on, we used to just go to space wearing the same sort of clothes you're wearing right now. The Russians did it with their early Soyuz. The Americans did it with their early space shuttle. But we learned through accident that astronauts need to wear a pressure suit, because if the ship loses pressure, you need that extra layer around you. So the last thing you put on before you head out to your spaceship is this great big heavy pressure suit. And in the United States, they paint them orange, so that if you end up jumping out of the spaceship and landing in the ocean, they'll be able to see this pumpkin bobbing around out in the Atlantic somewhere and be able to find you. So you're wearing this bright orange pumpkin suit, and you walk out of the building, and there's all the flash camera and everything, and you get onto this little, looks like one of those silver airliner kind of vans. It's actually called the Astro van, naturally, and you drive the Astro van out towards the launch pad. Imagine that feeling of seeing your spaceship in the distance. It's surreal. And you're in a place that is not a seaport or an airport, but a spaceport. This is where people leave the planet. It has sort of almost a reverential feel to it, especially because the spaceship is sitting up on a pedestal. It's raised above the surrounding plane. So it's up there with the big xenon lights on it, as if it was something really significant, which it is. And you ride the elevator up to it, and then it becomes quite, quite teenage-like. It's like getting into a tree fort, because there you are up in this, you're wearing your big orange suit, you've been training for all these years, multiple university degrees, and all this accolades and training, and at some point someone says, okay, get into the ship. So then you climb down on your hands and knees, and you just kind of crawl through this hole, and then you have to work your way down, and the spaceship's sitting like this, so you kind of, like if you imagine if your car was like that, and you had to get into it. So you open the back door and you climb in, and now you're standing on the back window looking up at your seat. That's what the space shuttle's like. That's what the Soyuz is like. You crawl into your seat, laying on your back with your knees up above your chest, and someone straps you in. And we only trust another astronaut to strap us in. In fact, about 2 or 3 days before launch, an astronaut takes ownership of the spaceship sitting on the launch pad, because we don't want anyone flicking a switch, because one bad switch will, and there's about 500 switches in the cockpit of the shuttle, and one bad switch can kill you. So we have ownership of the space shuttle. You're in there, strapped in, pull all your straps tight, and then, of course, your spouse has sent a little nice note for you. So they give you the note, and your wife or his spouse has said to you, and here, give him this kiss for me. So this astronaut leans over and gives you a manly kiss on the forehead. And then they gather all their things. What I did actually, it was another astronaut who hadn't flown in space yet. So I reached over and grabbed his name tag, which was just Velcro on his suit, and ripped it off and said, I'll give this back to you in a couple weeks. So they went out, close up, and then we do pressure checks, and we're all sitting on our backs for a couple hours. And what would you do? Sitting on your back, waiting for your spaceship to launch. Well, we were on a private loop, so we all told all the jokes we could think of and made fun of our doctors and did things like that. And then I thought, it's going to be really busy later, so I had a little nap, because I thought, I want to be well rested for space flight. But then, and it's mostly because of denial. I decided to be an astronaut when I was 9, and I've been sort of turning myself into an astronaut ever since. And I've already been training for years and years, and you can't get yourself emotionally wrapped up in believing you're going to go to space. You can't ever make that a measure of what you consider to be success, because the odds are so terrible, even when you've been selected. And even on that launch day, there are so many variables where you'd have to go, oh, we're not going today, a problem with the ship, or out. In one of my launches, actually, the weather was perfect in Florida, but the abort sites across the Atlantic that the shuttle might have to go to if it lost an engine during launch, all of the abort runways had bad weather. So we couldn't launch that beautiful fall day out of Florida because they had bad weather in North Africa and in Spain. So you know, you may or may not go today, but as every second goes by, if you plotted it on a chart, Elsa, it would be like time going by and Chris's emotions getting higher and higher and higher as the time plotted, because you start to believe it. And then the vehicle comes alive. At about 3 minutes before launch, the big engine bells of the space shuttle swing around to check their function, and the whole vehicle sways around like you're sitting on if you've ever ridden an elephant, it feels like this big elephant you're swaying around on top of. And then you're watching the clock tick down. After 30 seconds, the vehicle actually becomes autonomous. It takes complete control of itself. It's no longer being directed from the ground, but it's an alive thing that you're sitting on. And then 6 seconds before launch, you're staring at the instruments because the engines start to light. We have 3 engines. The shuttle had 5 engines. 3 of the engines you can light before launch, and there's like 3 little thermometers that come up. This humble-looking little instrument that shows 1.5 million pounds of thrust. And you're watching those 3 thermometers come up, and it's off-center, so it's like crying on the side of the shuttle in the wind, and the whole shuttle sways forward. And you can feel yourself getting swung forward, and then the metal of the shuttle becomes the spring. They call it the twang. You swing forward, and then you twang back to vertical. It takes a couple seconds, and then right at T0, all 3 engines are working perfectly, and then the 2 solids, the gigantic Roman candle solid rockets that provide another 6 million pounds of thrust suddenly ignite, and you are going somewhere. And it's a huge vibration. It really feels like someone just crashed into you. It's a big pulse of power through the vehicle, and then unbelievably, you start getting squished into your chair. Someone just stuck their hand in the small of your back and started pushing you faster and faster and faster to orbit. And you're just getting squished into your chair in a super high vibration because the shuttle's made of a bunch of pieces. It's like on the end of a tuning fork. And if you want to look at your instruments, you actually have to grab onto the chair or a handrail, pull your head forward and let your neck soak up all the vibrations so that your eyes can actually focus on the instruments. When you're staring at them, there's so many little hoops you have to jump through. So many miracles have to happen in a row in order to successfully push up through the atmosphere. In 45 seconds, you go through the speed of sound, straight up. You know, what Chuck Yeager did so bravely back in when my parents were teens, you accelerate through the speed of sound, straight up on this great big beast burning fuel at 12 tons a second. After 70 seconds, you're higher and faster than the Concorde ever went, and you're accelerating straight up. After 2 minutes, you're 160,000 feet, 6 times the speed of sound, and the solid rockets are done. They explode off, huge sparks and light in front of you, big bang as they leave your vehicle, and they fall off and parachutes open, and they go down into the ocean, and a ship goes out, divers safe them up, they pick them up, they drag them back into Florida, empty them out, clean them out, fill them up with fuel. Those get used again and again and again. But meanwhile, we're just rocketing off like being in a dragster with someone with their foot to the floor for another 6.5 minutes. And it's just a heavier and heavier oppressive weight, like someone pouring sand on you, just heavier and heavier and heavier, until finally, right at the very end, it's getting kind of hard to breathe after all this time. And suddenly, after 8 minutes and 42 seconds, the engine shut off instantly, and just like magic, you're weightless in space. That's what it's like to launch. I look for Toronto, and I look for the places, and I look for, hey, there's Cape Town, which I've never been to, and the big rock there, what's a Table Mountain, or I look for, trying to find Uluru, the Ayers Rock in the middle of Australia. You're looking for the big things. But after a while, you start instead just to see the whole world, and you get to know it. And you get to see it in different seasons. I was up there for one whole seasonal change as winter moved from one hemisphere to the other. And it starts revealing itself to you. Like, you thought you saw something yesterday, look at me now. Look at what you can see up on this planet now. And what I found was, after a while, as far as one positive personal, psychological, or whatever kind of change, was that after a couple months, I remember one day, Evan, who managed social media during the flight, was saying, you know, hey Dad, ask people what they want you to take a picture of. And so I did. I used Twitter. I said, hey everybody, you want me to take a picture of? And hundreds of thousands of people responded back, and they said, take a picture of my hometown. Because it's beautiful, and it's where I'm from, and I'm proud of it, and I love it. But even more importantly, I want to see how I fit in the context of the world. You know, how do I look from space? What you know, put me in perspective, please. And if I were there, that's what I'd be doing. So I did. And as I was coming across Karachi one day, Pakistan, and I took a picture of it, and I just tweeted, I forget, I think it's 7 million people or something. I couldn't help but say, this is, and that might have not been the first time, but it's just one I remember. I wrote, this is where 7 million of us live. And I didn't even consciously transition from me to us, or from them to us. But unconsciously, inevitably, inexorably, in my mind, we just became us. And there's no way to avoid it when you get to see the world from that perspective. And it's part of my motivation in asking that question and including everybody on Twitter, was part of my motivation in taking 45,000 pictures of the Earth that I'm distributing through the community colleges of Nova Scotia so that we can all see them. But for me, it was maybe the most enduring part of it, and hopefully one that other people will have a chance to think about a little bit too, and that is that we're all just riding this spaceship together. And it's really just us, and it's only a matter of perspective as to whether you can get to see that in your life or not. Folks.